Sabbath.
All the women would bathe themselves according to Jewish ceremony. They shut themselves in an interior patio so that the servants would not see them.
The suspicions of the old Christians were aroused even further if they suspected a converso was still keeping the kosher laws on hygiene and food.
In order to give the appearance that they were eating pork, they pretended to eat it and secretly threw it underneath the table.
It wasn't enough simply to say that you believed in Christianity. You also had to show that you were living the same sort of lifestyle as your old Christian neighbors. For example, did you eat pork? If you refused to eat pork and you were supposed to be a Christian, well, the authorities might think, well, perhaps these people haven't truly converted.
Today, there's still evidence of the old fear of being accused of being Jewish. Cafes and bars still hang pork in public view. This harks back to the time of the Inquisition, when it was a visible announcement that the owner ate pork and was therefore a true Christian. It wasn't just the Jewish laws on food that could draw the attention of the Inquisition. Something as simple as hanging laundry out to dry on the wrong day of the week could be an indication of heresy.
In the 16th century, for example, there was a case of one woman who was investigated by the Inquisition simply because she changed her linen on a Saturday. And this was felt to be a sign that perhaps she was reverencing the Jewish Sabbath rather more than a Christian Sunday.
The old Christian resentment against the secret Jews reached a boiling point, especially in cities like Seville. Under enormous political pressure, Ferdinand and Isabella went to Seville in a last-ditch effort to find a solution before their dreams of a secure rule under religious orthodoxy were dashed. And so it was that, after getting advice from the highest authorities of the Catholic Church in Seville, Isabella and Ferdinand did finally make the fateful decision that Spain needed an Inquisition. But despite their royal status, they couldn't create such a body without special permission from the ultimate Catholic, the Pope. On November the 1st, Pope Sixtus IV gave his permission, and the Spanish Inquisition was born. It began quietly, but as the number of tribunals grew, Ferdinand and Isabella realized they needed someone to take an overall responsibility. They applied to the Pope, and he issued a papal bull appointing Thomas de Torquemada as the first Grand Inquisitor. Torquemada presided over the early years of the Inquisition, some of the bloodiest of its entire existence, when the vast majority of its victims were Jewish. He also established many of the procedures the Inquisition was to follow for hundreds of years.
Thomas de Torquemada was the confessor of the Queen, and was also anti-Semitic. On the other hand, he drew up the first instructions of the Inquisition. He set down in black and white print what it could do and what it could not do. And thanks also to him, the Inquisition became a controllable, bureaucratic body which followed his rules, really, for the next 100 years.
The rules of the Inquisition didn't differentiate between men and women. Indeed, they recognized that the Jewish bloodline was passed through the female line, and that Jewish women were very influential in the converso community. So the Inquisition had no qualms in applying torture to women with the same vigor as to men. Female victims were stripped before being tortured. For some women, the humiliation of being naked in the presence of men was torture enough. But if that failed, the torturer would begin his work. Potro was a binding torture. The victim was secured to a rack or a vertical pole, and ropes were positioned around the body, allowing pain to be administered to specific areas with a fine degree of control. It also allowed the inquisitor to conduct a continuous interrogation, stopping only to have the torturer adjust the victim's level of pain. care was needed. Inquisition rules instructed that torture was not to be used to punish or kill the victim.
You could read the scenes because the notary, the clerk, takes every word down, every scream, every utterance is actually taken down. And you can see the way his hand shakes as well when doing it.
But records show that torture was a shockingly effective means of extracting confessions.
She was tied on the potro with the cords, and the garrots were ordered to be tightened. She said,
I don't remember. Take me away. Señores, release me, for I do not remember. Señores, for God's sake, have mercy on me. Do you not see how these people are killing me? I did it. For God's sake, let me go.
Once the Inquisition had gained that all-important confession, it was time to pass sentence. This was done at the grand finale to the Inquisition's work in any given town, the auto da fe, or Act of Faith. Auto da fe were a strange but impressive mix of church service, Supreme Court, and circus. The guilty were paraded in front of the hushed crowd, and punishments were handed out. Auto da fe were deliberately stage-managed to be a grand theatrical display of the power of the Inquisition, and many reached Super Bowl scale. Like the civil authorities, the Inquisition had a variety of punishments at its disposal, from imprisonment to banishment to death. But it also had some uniquely peculiar punishments. In the San Benito penance, the guilty party was forced to wear a loose vest emblazoned with a diagonal red cross. This branded the wearer a heretic. Convicted heretics had to wear the San Benito at all times, a humiliation to the wearer, unable to escape the constant public gaze. But that was the point. It was a punishment that was also a deterrent, a reminder to others of the price paid for falling foul of the Inquisition. But the ultimate penalty was death by fire. Burning at the stake was reserved for two kinds of victims: determined, obstinate heretics who simply refused to cooperate, and repeat offenders. In the days of the Inquisition, 2 strikes and you were most definitely out. To avoid staining their hands, the Inquisition didn't carry out the sentence of death. Instead, they handed the accused over to the civil authorities, who inflicted the sentence. Even at the end, there was still a glimmer of hope for the convicted heretics. If they confessed their sins, they could escape being burnt alive. But the reprieve was being strangled to death instead. A grisly option, but one that many took. Refusing to confess meant the fire would be lit and an agonizing death was imminent. The records do not disguise the gory details of death at the stake.
When the flames attacked him, he bent, twisted, and writhed till he could no more. He was as fat as a suckling pig and burnt internally, so that, after the flames left him, he continued burning like a hot coal, and bursting open, his entrails fell out like those of Judas.
People could be tried and punished by the Inquisition